last week we talked about how Moses and Aaron went to see Pharaoh and talked to them about letting God's people go, and he didn't. Well, remember last week I said that there were some plagues that started. And this week we're going to talk about the first plague. So the very first plague that happened was, well, it's kind of gross. It involves blood. I know some little boys that are going, ooh, blood. Okay, so here's where it's found. It's actually in Exodus chapter 7. And it's actually verse 14 all the way to the end, which is verse 25. Well, that print got really small. Whoops, shrunk my screen. Anyway, it's Exodus chapter 7, verse 14 through 25. Now, I'm going to read it from the Message Bible because that's just a little easier to read, easier for you to understand. So, let's read all these scriptures and then we'll talk a little bit about it. So it says, God said to Moses, Pharaoh is a stubborn man. He refuses to release the people. First thing in the morning, go and meet Pharaoh as he goes down to the river. At the shore of the Nile, take the staff that turned into a snake and say to him, God, the God of the Hebrews, sent me to you with this message. Release my people so that they can worship me in the wilderness. So far you haven't listened. This is how you'll know that I'm God. I'm going to take this staff that I'm holding and strike the Nile River water. The water will turn to blood. The fish in the Nile will die. The Nile will stink. And the Egyptians won't be able to drink the Nile water. God said to Moses, tell Aaron, take your staff and wave it over the water of Egypt, over its rivers, its canals, its ponds, all its bodies of water, so that they turn to blood. There will be blood everywhere in Egypt, even in the pots and pans. Moses and Aaron did exactly as God commanded them. Aaron raised his staff and it hit the water in the Nile with Pharaoh and his servants watching. All the water in the Nile turned into blood. The fish in the Nile died. The Nile stank. And the Egyptians couldn't drink the Nile water. The blood was everywhere in Egypt. But the magicians of Egypt did the same thing with their incantations. Still, Pharaoh remained stubborn. He wouldn't listen to them as God had said. He turned on his heel and he went home, never giving it a second thought. But all the Egyptians had to dig inland from the river for water because they couldn't drink the Nile water. 7 days went by after God had struck the Nile. So our first plague is that God had the Nile River turned into blood. Yeah, I'm not drinking any water that looks like blood. That's just nasty. Not gonna do it. But that's what happened. God wanted to show Pharaoh that there were some bad things going to happen to his land if he didn't let his people go, if he didn't let the Israelites go. And Pharaoh was just stubborn, and he didn't let them go. So God turned the Nile River into blood. And the Nile River was a huge river, and it was their source of water. And you know what? You can't live without water. You only can go a couple days without drinking water, actually 3. But you can't go very long without water. So you know what it meant that they had to do? The Egyptians had to go build a well away from the river to find water. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if I'd done something like that and I had to go find another source of water, I think I'd be a little mad at Pharaoh. But we'll see that there are many more plagues to come because Pharaoh was just stubborn and his heart was not for God like ours should be. And he got real stubborn and he did not want to listen. We do that sometimes, don't we? We don't listen to our mommies or our daddies when they try to get us to do something. We're a little stubborn on that. Well, we're going to learn over the next several weeks on each one of these plagues just how stubborn Pharaoh was. Here's the thing, and we'll read in here, but as the Nile River turned to blood, the Egyptians were the ones who suffered because God took care of his people, the Israelites, and they still had water. Just like God will take care of us. But you know what we have to do? We have to listen to God. All right, guys, so that was plague number 1 about the blood. And I want you to remember these plagues as we're going through them, because we might have a pop quiz at the end. I don't know, but we'll see. But you guys be good, and I'll see you here in just a few minutes for church. Love you guys.